Today on Divergence SMP, I want to make an ink farm. And if there's time, a glow ink farm too. There are a few good reasons for farming ink sacs. For one thing, CB Technocraft has made a farm for prismarine on the realm. But if you want dark prismarine, you need one black dye for every block of dark prismarine you craft. That's kind of an expensive recipe, but it means you need a lot of black dye. Personally, I need the ink sacs because I want gray dye for gray concrete. There's a project I want to work on that requires gray concrete, and there's no flour for gray dye. Light gray, yeah, but not gray. There's two sources of black dye. One is wither roses. I could farm wither roses, but it isn't the kind of farm you can AFK at, and many people wouldn't be comfortable using it. The other way is to get black dye from ink sacs from squid. And a squid ink sac farm would be something anyone would be happy to use. Divergence SMP is a Bedrock Edition realm, so this farm is designed to work in Bedrock Edition. It doesn't work in Java Edition. I might make a separate video where I do an ink sac farm in Java Edition too, but for now, the things I'm talking about how the mechanics of this farm work, is for Bedrock Edition. First of all, squid spawn in oceans or rivers, in groups of 2 to 4 in oceans or groups of 2 in rivers. So I'm going to get more squid spawning in an ocean. That's why I'm building this farm above an ocean. Now, because it's a realm, sim distance is 4 and I'm at Y135. That's high enough to be far enough above the ocean that nothing's going to spawn in it. If you're on a higher sim distance, you might want to be up around Y191. I don't like to build that high if I don't have to though, because that's at cloud level, and unless you get rid of the clouds or change the height of the clouds, you're going to be working with clouds running through your build. This farm is based on a design I saw from Silent Whisperer, with a few improvements. It will be a split density farm, and because of this, it must be chunk aligned. The first thing I have to do is mark out the boundaries of 6 chunks in a row. I find the chunk borders using math. Finding coordinates of roughly where I want the farm to be, I divide the X and Z coordinates by 16, drop the fraction remainder, and multiply by 16. That will be the coordinates of the corner of a chunk. Then add 15 to the X and Z, and you have the opposite corner of the same chunk. Once the first chunk is mapped out, it's easy to mark the borders of 5 more chunks in a row next to the first. Split density farms are very powerful. They take advantage of Bedrock Edition spawning mechanics to as much as double the spawn rates. How it works is when a mob attempts to spawn near the player, the game checks to see if there are too many mobs of that type already in the area. If the mob cap limit is already exceeded, the spawn attempt fails. The area in which the game looks for other mobs is within 4 chunks of the location of the spawn attempt, not 4 chunks from the player. So if I have 2 tanks of water for squid to spawn in that are exactly 4 chunks apart, and I stand AFK between them, squid spawn attempts in one tank are not affected by the number of squid in the other tank. Each tank uses its own separate mob cap. Theoretically, you could have 4 spawning platforms, north, south, east, and west of the player, each 4 chunks away from each other. That would be a quad split density farm, which could as much as quadruple the rates of the farm. But such a farm isn't realistic for Sim Distance 4, where nothing will spawn more than 44 blocks away. The squid spawning tanks will be 48 blocks across, centered on the end chunks I laid out, but only 13 blocks wide. Nothing will spawn more than 44 blocks away from the AFK spot, so it doesn't do any good to make it larger than 48 by 13. I placed down 2 magma blocks where the middle of the tank is going to be. That orients me as to where I want to put the unloaders for the hopper minecarts, and then get to work on the platform for the hopper minecarts that will run underneath the tank. The platform is made with upper slabs, but I placed chiseled blackstone where the powered rail will go. These are full blocks that look different than the black stone, so it's easy to see where to put the levers underneath to power the blocks, and easy to see where the powered rail needs to be placed. There are 4 rows like this, 2 rows 1 block in from the ends, and 2 rows 16 blocks from them. There are 2 minecart hoppers running on a left and right rail line for each tank. The hopper minecarts unload at 2 stations right next to each other. This puts the chests closer to the AFK spot than Silent Wisperer's design that put the chests on the long end. That's the point for the hopper minecart to turn around. And it's a light block, so I'm not going to have things spawning on it. Okay, that's the collection system done. Next I have to put mega blocks on top of everything. By now you're probably wondering what the material list for this farm looks like. And I don't know, I'm too lazy to come up with it. I would say that this is not an early game farm. I needed several farms to get me the materials to make this ink farm. I have an iron farm to give me all the rails, CPU Technocraft's gold farm to give me all the powered rails, plus a froglight farm that not only gives me the large amount of froglights I'm going to use for this farm, but also magma cream that I can make large amounts of magma blocks for this farm. The side walls of the Squid Tank are 7 blocks high. Silent Wisperer's design used glass blocks for the walls, but when testing it I discovered a flaw. Squid, like most passive mobs, only spawn at light level of 7 or above in Bedrock Edition, or 9 or above in Java Edition. This means if you AFK at this farm, no squid will appear at night. To fix this, I'm making the walls out of alternating rows of glass blocks and light blocks. I use froglights because the froglight farm I mentioned produces huge amounts. You could use jack-lanterns or glowstone or sea lanterns. This may not light up the middle of the tank, but it at least lights up enough of it to have a valid space for squid to spawn even at night. When half the wall is 3 blocks high, I place ice blocks along 2 sides. Then when the wall is a full 7 blocks high, I place ice blocks on the upper 4 blocks of the 2 sides. You really don't want to fall in the tank once it's flooded. The froglights help all the ice melt, and this fills the tank. Now, one of the squid spawning tanks is done. I just need to build the same exact thing on the opposite side, exactly 4 chunks away from this tank.
Eventually.
I'll go into my little AFK spot here. Just get to sand right here. And wait. Let's see what I get in an hour. Feeling this is going to be pretty productive. Like, better than that gunpowder farm I made before.
1 hour later.
Well, it's been about an hour. Now, there's other people on the realm right now, and they are sleeping through the night, so I don't expect this farm will work with 100% efficiency at night, but it will still work. But since people have been sleeping through the night anyway, I'm probably going to get better yields than I might otherwise have. But your results may vary. I want to ultimately modify this so that there's one switch to stop all the minecarts. I am nervous about leaving the minecarts running all of the time because loading and unloading the chunks, they may disappear. Let's see what I got out of this. That's 1 of 4 chests. Hang on. I need a container to put this stuff in. It's not going to fit in one shulker box. Well, I was transferring everything to the shulker box, but it's full. And there's still this much left in this chest. Yeah, I'd say this was a successful test. After 1 hour, that's not too shabby. So there's a little bit more cleaning up I want to do. I like to set this up so that there's one switch near the AFK spot that will activate all the minecarts at once. And I'd like to make another portal that leads to this so it's easier to get to. But I think that's good enough for now. Now, since I'm on the subject of making a squid farm, why not make a glow squid farm too? I could work on that now. I'll go and make a glow squid farm. Now with the ink farm done, I think I can move on to make a glow squid farm to get glowing. But on the ink farm, I kind of used up most of the magma blocks I had and most of the ice. So I had to go gather those resources, and on my way back from gathering ice, I made some new friends. Say hello to Jenny, and Badger, and Little Noodle, my new puppy friends. I'm gonna take them on an adventure. Well, kind of. I figure the glow ink farm I can make near world spawn. Glow squid will spawn, at least these are the rules for Bedrock Edition, anywhere underground below Y30. And it just so happens if I could find the cave again, there was a cave very near world spawn where Diggin built a slime farm, and I helped to light that up a week or so ago, light up all the caves around it. There's a lot of caves around it, but it didn't have any flooded caves. So as long as there are no flooded caves nearby, this would be an ideal place to make the glow squid farm. I think this level will work fine. You know what? I'm just gonna have you guys sit down here. I'm worried about your health. As long as there's no other flooded caves around, this farm is really easy to make. I just need to be below Y30. And if you think the lower in the world I am, the better the spawn rates, nope, that's not the case in Bedrock Edition. That's a Java thing. So as long as I'm below Y30, that's good enough. I'm going to mark out an area that's 16 by 16 for the tank for the glow squid. Not because it's chunk aligned or anything. This is something that doesn't need to be chunk aligned. I just feel like that's a good round number. I heard it drowned around here. I'm nervous about that. I can't have any flooded caves around here. Where the devil are these drowned coming from? That's no good. I have to get rid of this. I can't have these waterfalls around because glow squid will spawn in them. That is no bueno. So I mark out the 16 by 16 area, and I'm going to put down rails in that area, just like in the ink farm where I used a different kind of block for where I'm putting power for the powered rail. I'm going to do the same thing here, so I can easily see where the switches go and where the powered rail goes. Okay, that should do it. That should run around the tire farm. Stop to unload. Once it's unloaded, it's on out. Perfect. The tank for the glow squid is a lot like the tank for the squid in the ink farm was. Magma blocks on the bottom, walls of glass and stone. I really don't need to light up the interior, so I'm not using any frog lights. The walls will be 7 blocks high, as before, but I'm going to cover up the top with slabs, just for safety's sake, so nobody will fall in. In this case, because the walls aren't lit up, there's nothing to melt the ice, so I'm just going to have to break it by hand. I will not use a tool just break the ice by hand. And that way I'm not going to accidentally break the magma blocks on the floor below. There. Just made use of the materials that I got from digging that little ledge off. What did I get as I was building this? There's some glowing sacks already. That water column is a concern. I don't want it there. Okay, I got rid of the water stream there. That might be a problem for me. Everything's built. Oh, no, AFK spot. I need to fix that. I have a feeling this is going to work pretty effectively, because I got a lot of glowing sacks while I was just setting up the AFK spot, but let's give it the old 1 hour test. And I'll stand here AFK for 1 hour and see what I get out of it.
1 hour later.
Okay, it's been an hour. Let's see what I got. I did notice a zombie wandering around over here. Give me that bone. Ah. You can keep the armor, I don't want it. Alright, let's see how this has gone. That's a lot better than I expected. Over 15 stacks. Not too shabby, and it was really easy to put together. Now I have an effective farm for ink sacks and for glowing sacks. Relatively easy to make, although the one for the ink sacks required a lot of materials. You know, in doing research for these farms, I discovered a lot of differences between Bedrock and Java Edition and how these things work, and it's inspired me to want to try and make a glowing farm and an ink sac farm in Java Edition, point out how they're different. Maybe I'll do that next time, but for now, I'm going to take my stuff back home and try and get my new friends back home safe.